Hello, it's Hayley again, and this month I have a lot to update you on. I'm probably going to split it into multiple videos just so that I can cover all the topics. So please bear with me and look out for the other videos as they're released. The next thing I want to discuss is there has been what I would consider to be rather a huge shake-up in my care and the care of potentially thousands of other transgender people, especially the younger and more vulnerable ones, the ones that needed the help the most, that the NHS service are just not servicing and are just not reliably there for, especially as regards hormone care and things like that. They're just not there for them, and the waiting lists are horrendous and people are literally dying waiting to get treatments because of not being able to handle the waiting lists and the depression that comes from being forced to live through a puberty that you didn't ask for, you don't want, and is demoralising you every single day the further it continues. And that is the striking off of Dr. Michael Webberley from the Gender GP service. They have, as I've mentioned previously, Helen Webberley had run afoul of the General Medical Commission before, basically because they're too progressive for the NHS to cope with. As in, they're willing to prescribe to people that are under the age of 16, which the NHS don't really like in any way, shape or form. So they've been, well, she had been suspended for a while, and now, as I said before, the General Medical Practitioner, or GMC, sorry, and then started taking pot shots at Michael Webberley once he took over the service, and now after a review they've done the same to him. So they're both on an interim suspension, which means they could be reinstated, but it's not a 10-minute thing. I mean, this isn't going to be resolved next month or even next year, according to some of the medical people that I've spoken to. And that they're not experts on it, but because they are medical people, they do know how slow, well, like everything, the GMC and the NHS are at resolving any issues. So this isn't going to be a 10-minute thing that's just gone away again next month. They've both been struck off on an interim suspension for now, which could either be rescinded or it could become a full removal, but basically that means they're not licensed medical practitioners in this country anymore. The only thing I've received from them about it is an email basically saying, don't worry, your hormones won't be interrupted, we're going to get somebody to prescribe for another country. And at the time I thought, well, yeah, fine, doesn't affect me as long as I get my prescriptions. I don't really care how it happens. Perfect. But I've since spoken, which is going to be the next part of this video, spoken to a consultant, and I have been applying for my gender recognition certificate as well, and I've had a consultant for my facial feminisation surgery now. And when I was sat with him, I told him what gender clinic I was under, who had given me my diagnosis at that gender clinic, because that's what he's expecting to hear. And then he started asking about hormones, and I said that they came from the Gender GP in Webberley's service, and there who'd been looking after me for these years. And straight away he was like, I won't work with them, I'll have nothing to do with them, they are not licensed to perform medicine in this country at this time, and I won't be involved with anything that is. So now, of course, now this has made me think, well, this is bad, because I'm now left with many questions, wondering like, does my original diagnosis with Helen Webberley all them years ago, 3 years ago almost now, next month it will be 3 years, does my original diagnosis with her still stand? Because I was using her as a second reference on my GRC documentation that I've brought up previously. I was using Northampton Gender Clinic, one of the doctors there, and then she was going to be my second one. But now I don't know if anything that she's done stands anymore, and it did say on the documentation they must be a practicing doctor, they have to be registered and practicing, which she no longer is now. And I did think that I did send out an email at the time saying, does this stand? Am I going to need Michael to review it? And then in the meantime, they've just said, oh, we'll refer this to our medical team, and in the meantime, Michael's been struck off now as well, or suspended now. I'm not in as bad a shape as other people because I do have a normal GP, and I do have a diagnosis from the gender clinic, so with a little bit of effort I can still just go to my GP and set up getting my hormones through him, just to make sure that there isn't going to be a problem. I feel so bad for all the kids and things that are just getting involved with them, or those that are even where I was a year ago, where they are the only people that I was being treated by, the only people at that stage before the gender clinic finally got involved after more than 2 years of waiting. Up until then they were all I had. Up until September last year they were all I had, and now there are still going to be so many people, some 2,000 patients in my understanding of people that are going to be waiting in limbo now. And I've now got to do a lot of legwork as well. I've got to run around and try and get my GP, who is hard work at the best of times. They're just so inefficient and such a mess to work with my local GP that yeah, it's going to be a pain, but I'm going to have to try and sort it out. I mean, I tried to get an appointment yesterday, and it's like, you know, trying to find rocking horse shit. It just doesn't, you can't get an appointment. And how, I can't even get an appointment to speak to my doctor. How am I supposed to speak to him and tell him that I'm going for facial feminisation surgery? The gender clinic are going to be contacting him. I need to speak to him about my gender recognition certificate, because now he's going to have to be my second reference. Like, and I can't even get an appointment with him. And now I'm supposed to rely on him to do like my blood work and prescribe my hormones on time as well. I just don't see it happening. I see there are going to be so many problems down the road in the coming months now. Obviously I hope I'm wrong, and I hope I'm just flying off the handle here and things just come good again, but at the moment it just seems like it's all like it's going to be a struggle to get things put in place. So yeah, I'm going to be struggling with that for a bit. For those of you that do follow me and have, on my recommendation and things, gotten involved with Gender GP, and those of you that just happen to be involved with Gender GP anyway, I would suggest you know, you contact them, find out what's going on, and hope, and we all hope for the best, and we all try and support the Webberleys as best we can. Although I am going to be trying to cover my own back and get involved with my GP for my prescription and things, just so that I know I'm safe. I'm not going to cancel my subscription. I certainly hope that they get the issue resolved. The one medical person I spoke to said it could be years, which is just a nightmare for those that are in limbo. An alternative is out there. If you are one of these people who's stuck waiting for your first gender clinic appointment, GIC appointment, then there is still an alternative out there in the form of gender care. I can't speak to the quality of the care or their pricing or anything really. I just know that there is an alternative out there from what I have seen on Reddit, and that is basically the only knowledge I have, so I'm sorry that I haven't come with a full breadth of knowledge to do with all of this, but it's all I can offer you. It's the best I have. Gender care is another private doctor organisation. They have been around for a while. I don't believe there's any problems as such with investigation, because basically all they do is they just take the exact same NHS pathway, so they're not going to run afoul of the NHS's backwards way of doing things, because they do exactly the same thing, but because they're doing it privately, the waiting times are just so much shorter. I saw one post on Reddit saying that, you know, once they'd paid the consultation fees and everything else that was involved, from their initial contacting them to getting on their books, it was about 3 weeks. And then they were on hormones within, I think, about 3 months. The trouble is with that is, I do believe if they are just following the NHS pathway laid out by them, then all that's going to happen is, if you're under the age of 16, you'll get blockers and you will not be permitted to be put on hormones. Now, I'm not going to say that any of this is cast iron, because this is stuff I'm getting off of Reddit, and Reddit isn't exactly, you know, the font of all knowledge. It is very helpful, but people's accounts can vary wildly and isn't foolproof, so if you take it with a pinch of salt and do your own research into it. But gender care is an alternative out there if all of a sudden gender GPs disappears overnight, or you can't get treatments, or surgeons and GIC or whoever else, all these other people. I have confidence in the Webberleys, we all do, that have used their service. The rest of the medical community isn't going to work with them anymore. All of a sudden you're left out in limbo yourself, so you need to protect yourself, and we need to try and obviously help the Webberleys out as much as possible. But that's my take on it. Gender care is an alternative. I don't know much about it. Do your own research, figure out if it's something you want to do and if you can afford, and you know, I hope for the best for you. Watching, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you all. Bye.